NATO forces are strongly considering allowing use of their weapons by Ukraine to take out Russian targets inside Russia. But Putin is responding with one of his old tricks. But we're going to talk about why he is all talk and no substance. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's get into it. Okay, so NATO, there's an increasing outcry from leadership within NATO and Europe to allow Ukraine to hit some targets inside of Russia. And we've talked extensively on this channel about why that's so essential. But what's interesting is a fairly diverse chorus of voices are urging the United States and other countries to allow their weapons to be used against Russian targets. This, of course, includes NATO head Jens Stoltenberg. It includes Sweden, but it also includes a few other interesting folks, such as U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson, saying that the United States should allow Ukraine to wage war, quote, in the way they see fit. Commenting on Kiev's request to allow it to use American weapons to strike territory, U.S. House of Representatives Intelligence Committee also released an appeal from a group of congressmen to parties and from both parties to Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, calling to speed up delivery. And I think this is interesting because there's some core reasons. You also had, of course, former U.S. Army Europe Commander Mark Hertling in an interview with CNN saying that, yeah, we need to lower the standards of using military equipment on specific Russian targets. And I think this is interesting for a couple of reasons. First off, as always, we know that Russia has taken advantage of this public policy by NATO countries because one of Russia's largest vulnerabilities is its deep supply lines that it has to maintain within Ukrainian sovereign territory to maintain the front line. As you can see here, let's see if we can get the little distance measurer. To get logistics supplies, if you could somehow have a totally straight line, which you can't, it's going to have to weave through some roads, but you're looking at potentially up to 150 kilometers from the Russian border through occupied Ukrainian territory in order for supplies, troops, or munitions to reach the front lines. Even at some of the narrowest points in the Kharkiv or in the Zaporizhzhia region, you've got literally up to 100 kilometers of territory that supplies have to pass through in order to get to the front line. And that is a vulnerability for Russia. Ukraine, relying on drones, satellite imagery, and Western systems like the HIMARS, can interdict these supplies as they sit in depots. But Russia has realized it can solve that problem by launching more border incursions, like the one we saw in Kharkiv. You can see here that instead of having to transit through hundreds of kilometers of Ukrainian territory, it has to go a mere 8 kilometers to get to the front lines. This is because Russia knows that Ukraine is prohibited from using Western-provided weapons to strike Russian territory. Now, Ukraine has already used its weapons to strike Russian territory. The Freedom of Russia Legion, for example, and the drone attacks into Russian oil refineries. But those are Ukrainian-made weapons, and they aren't the highly sophisticated weapon systems that you see provided by Western forces. And this has enabled Russia to sit on the border, right, in full view of the Ukrainians and gather the large strike force that ended up pushing into this region and then is responsible for the relative success that Russia had. Ukraine works tirelessly, right, to disrupt Russian offensives before they get to the front line through targeting logistics and major troop gathering points. So the fact that they couldn't do it until those troops were in Ukraine meant that Russia showed up with all the advantages, with the deck literally stacked in its favor. And the problem with this sort of thing is that this prohibition is just a policy. It is not a law. It is not subject to some sort of it's not like the weapons themselves won't work inside Russia. It's just a policy that these countries introduced to prevent escalation. Now, here's we're going to talk about Putin's reaction and why it is pretty childish. But first, of course, if you feel like you need an extra edge to get things done, you want to check out Strike Gum. Strike Gum will give you the edge you need to get whatever you need done during the day. It's the energy drink alternative. 0 sugar, 100 milligrams of alpha GPC, 90 milligrams of caffeine in every individual piece, right? That's the equivalent of an energy drink in every 5 of them. 5 in every pack. So if you are interested, go to strikegum.com and check it out. Or if you have an Amazon account, you can just order on Amazon. We actually introduced our 5-pack, which is perfect for those of you that don't want to ship one individual pack of gum, but are still just want to kind of try it and aren't prepared to get the full tray. The full tray, obviously, your best deal. You end up getting the equivalent of an energy drink's worth of caffeine for like, it ends up being like 90 cents. But if you're interested, right, the 5-pack is that perfect middle ground. So check it out. And thanks to all you guys that have left us reviews on Amazon for the 5-pack, because you guys know that we need to be able to tell consumers on Amazon, hey, we are the superior energy gum. We're made in the USA. We use high quality ingredients like natural caffeine. And we are a proprietary formula. We're not some white labeled thing that someone slapped their wrapper on but was made in China, right? They were made by Liquid Core. It's right there in Denver. You can go visit them. So check us out, strikegum.com, or search Strike Gum on Amazon. Okay, so this is what I thought was kind of annoying, right? Putin is decided that because the West is considering this, and also I think he's lashing out because many Western countries have pledged a lot of additional aid to Ukraine this week, he's lashing out. And he is saying in Europe, especially smaller countries, they should realize what they are playing with. They should remember that they are countries with small, densely populated territories. This is a factor they should keep in mind before talking about striking Russia. Right? In addition to the fact that he is pretending like he doesn't understand the difference between giving Ukraine weapons that they can then use to defend themselves and the countries themselves striking Russia, right? It's not going to be a Latvian missile. It is not going to be a missile launched from Latvia, controlled by the Latvian military. It's going to be military aid provided to Ukraine that, frankly, Ukraine can always use however it wants. You guys are have just been asking Ukraine not to do this, right? So the fact that Putin is treating it like, oh, if you allow them to use these weapons on Russian territory, you have small, densely populated territory. So that, you may note, this is a threat to strike civilian centers, right? Now, bear in mind, first off, Russia recently launched a strike against a Kharkiv supermarket, right? Which obviously is a military target and not at all loaded with civilians, where he killed, I think, almost a dozen people. But you also have to ask yourself, what exactly do you think Russia expected by doing this? By massing forces on the border and then launching a large incursion? Like, realistically, if you're Putin, right, and opening a brand new front, do you think that a reasonable person would infer that this action, taking clear advantage, gaming the system, so to speak, would spur European countries to reconsider their prohibition on Western weapons, right? Is that possible? Is that something that someone who has 2 decades of running one of the most powerful European countries might be able to logically infer? So this is, I'm kidding around, of course. This is something that Putin absolutely knew was going to happen, right? That's why he launched this attack, because he wanted to exploit this vulnerability before it was corrected. He knew that he was only going to be able to take 1, maybe 2 draws at the well here. And the fact that he was stopped, I think he wanted to see this force plunge and get to Kharkiv. Only when his offensive was stopped dead by the Ukrainian forces did he start to say, oh, no, it was actually a buffer zone all along. And then he sits there and says, we might expand the buffer zone if you strike Russian territory. And it's like, bro, you've been trying. You can't, right? And it is not people are like, oh, this is a dangerous escalation. You can't just attack another country's sovereign territory. Oh wait, Putin's been doing that all along, sending his military intelligence, emphasis on military, to conduct arson attacks against logistics sites inside Western European countries, inside NATO countries, right? They are burning down things like warehouses, right? Factories, even weirdly an IKEA store in Lithuania, which I suspect may have been some kind of accident. But the takeaway here is that Putin has no qualms about having his intelligence forces conduct strikes. FYI, guys, if you burn down a military warehouse with military gear, you've conducted a military operation, right? You've engaged in a military strike. And so the fact that Putin is willing to make this escalation, and you notice the West isn't sitting there and going, Putin would do well to remember that Moscow is a very densely populated territory. That's because the West knows that it has options other than just being all talk, right? The West could sit there and go, oh, you want to play stupid games? Okay, maybe we will allow Ukraine to strike Russian targets since you're playing these games. Maybe we'll increase our aid to Russia, or aid to Ukraine, which is something we've also seen in the wake of this report. And so I point this out because people with real strength, they respond to these kind of provocations with action. They make actual changes. And if you don't have the ability to respond with action, then you resort to empty threats. And just like a child, right? Or like a criminal who's under arrest in the back of a cop car, only then do they start to rant and rave, scream, and threaten the police, because they know that if they had another option before they had been arrested, they would have taken it, right? So take Putin's statements when you hear them as the rantings of someone who is out of actions and is resorting to mere words. I'm so certain that's true because, again, this is something that Putin expected to happen, right? This is someone who has created this obvious conditions, this obvious reaction, and then is playing the victim, trying to go, oh, NATO did this. NATO did this, right? So, you know, let's see if I can find the old bike stick meme. Yes, here we go. If anyone wants to tag Vladimir Putin on Instagram, you can do so with the nice bike stick meme generator. As you can see, here is Vladimir Putin. He is positioning his forces on the immediate border, massing them on the border with Ukraine. Then going, oh, why is the West saying that they should use their weapons to strike the obvious invasion force I staged right over the border? Oh, I'm such a victim of Western aggression, right? Anyway, guys, that's all I had. Thanks so much. Be sure to like the video. It helps tell the YouTube algorithm that I make good content. And subscribe to my channel. It also tells the YouTube algorithm that I'm a legit content creator and not some unhinged crazy person. Those people are in charge of countries. See ya.